I'm a 32-year-old woman who was adopted as a baby. Although my adoption was meant to be closed, my biological parents' names were still visible on the paperwork I received from the hospital and adoption agency. About 10 years ago, I managed to track down my birth mother. We exchanged a few emails, spoke over the phone, and she even sent me photos of my biological siblings who weren't placed for adoption. I told her I'd like to meet my siblings, and she believed they'd want to meet me too. But she explained she needed time to break the news of my existence, as she had kept it a secret for over 20 years. That was 10 years ago though, and since then, she hasn't reached out again to tell me if she shared this with the rest of the family. I haven't heard from any of them, so I assume my existence remains a secret. Later, I did try emailing her about something unrelated, a medical history question, but I never got a response. It seems she's no longer interested in contact, which is completely understandable. Though I looked, I never managed to locate my biological father. Recently, I've considered submitting my DNA to 23andMe to potentially find him or relatives on his side. I'm also curious about my ethnicity and heritage. I realize, however, that if anyone from my birth mother's side has submitted DNA or does so in the future, they'll discover that I exist. I've respected her wishes by not reaching out directly to my siblings, even though I have their contact information. I can't shake the feeling that going through with 23andMe feels like a sneaky workaround, like I'm trying to bypass my bio mom's wishes while pretending it's no big deal. It feels a bit wrong, almost like a betrayal. I thought about giving my bio mom a heads up that I planned to submit my DNA, but since she ghosted me after our last exchange, I worry it might come across as a threat or ultimatum. So am I wrong for considering 23andMe to find my bio dad, or should I try to warn my bio mom first? Edit. From what I know, my conception wasn't traumatic or complicated. My bio dad was someone my bio mom casually hooked up with in her early 20s. When she found out she was pregnant, she didn't tell him because she wasn't interested in raising a child with him. Honey, you're absolutely not the idiot here. Don't stress over her feelings. She hasn't shown much concern for yours. After all, she couldn't even bother to respond to a medical history question, which is pretty frustrating. Wanting to learn about your biological family is a perfectly valid reason to use 23andMe. You don't know your bio mom's secrecy. You have every right to contact your siblings too. If you're open to it, I'd suggest giving her a heads up, allowing her to break the news herself. But if she doesn't reply, you still have every right to reach out to them. Just be prepared that your mom and siblings may respond in ways you didn't expect. It's a public test that you're paying for, so no one has the right to stop you, and you're under no obligation to inform anyone, no matter your reason. Honestly, medical history should be provided in closed adoptions anyway. Everyone deserves to know their family health risks. Right now, you have no idea if there's a family history of cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, stroke, or anything else you should screen for. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I tried contacting my bio dad recently and he blocked me. Still, I think it's pretty unfair that your bio mom ghosted you. You shouldn't have to tiptoe around her forever. It's not an attack on her. You deserve to learn about yourself. She's had 10 years to share the truth with the family. That's more than enough time. Go ahead and take the test. If your daughter conceived, my perspective might be different from others. I'd recommend moving forward carefully and recognizing that your biological dad may not want his entire family to know before he has the chance to decide on his own terms. I learned this the hard way. When I reached out to relatives without my bio dad's knowledge, I ended up losing my chance to ever get to know him. Avoid messaging family members with questions about your bio dad or any other details without his permission. Honestly, it would be unwise not to take precautions, and you could risk missing out on knowing him altogether. I hope you find him, but be prepared that he may not want contact. To start, I'm a 19-year-old female, and my boyfriend Nick is 18. We've been together for nearly 4 months. Before him, I was in a very toxic relationship that left me with a lot of trauma and trust issues, which still affect me. With Nick, those issues have mostly faded, though sometimes they come back. Recently, I started keeping a diary on my phone as a distraction and safe space, mainly because I don't trust anyone in my house not to snoop if I kept a physical one. One day, Nick and I were on a call, and I was feeling down because we'd had a small fight earlier. I opened my notes app to write about how Nick had been getting on my nerves recently, and how some of our fights stem from my trust issues and other small things. Nick heard me typing and asked, "What have you been writing for so long?" I didn't want to get into it, so I replied, "Oh, nothing, just some reminders." Eventually, I admitted I was writing in my notes app, and he asked, "May I see?" I said, "No, sorry." At that point, he started begging and even cried, saying that I was hiding things from him. I felt bad, so after about half an hour, I told him what I was writing. He responded, "When you're feeling down, I want you to come to me, no matter how minor it seems. I just want to know you're not hiding anything from me." In the end, he didn't see the note or anything else I've written. So am I in the wrong here? Honestly, you're not in the wrong at all. Who does he think he is to demand access to your private thoughts? You've only been together for 4 months. That's not long enough to be demanding that level of access. This behavior is controlling, and he has no right to make you feel guilty for setting boundaries. If he can't trust you, you should question where this relationship is going. Sweetie, it sounds like another toxic situation. You're not at fault, but you might want to think about ending this before it gets too serious. And definitely keep writing in your diary to sort out what you're feeling. Why do you keep ending up in these toxic relationships? He actually started crying just because you were writing something personal? Yikes. Privacy matters, even in relationships. Writing in a journal can be very personal, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. He should respect it. Curiosity is natural, but once you said no, he should have just respected your boundaries and dropped it. Maybe a break from dating would help, giving you time to rebuild trust and work on forming healthy relationships. Honestly though, why did she make it obvious she was writing something private right in front of him? That's like walking up to someone and saying, "I've got a secret, but I'm not telling you." I don't think either of them is really at fault here. They're both just teenagers after all. I'm a 25-year-old male, married to Ella, also 25, for 2 years now. Ella is very close to her dad, Steve, as are her 3 older siblings. I'd also have a great bond with Steve, and honestly feel closer to him than to my own family. We spend a lot of time together with him, Ella's siblings, and their partners, which is really nice. When we met, I knew Ella loved being near her family and valued living close to them. I enjoy it too, since it means having supportive family nearby, not just people who only reach out when they want something. Steve lost his wife, my late mother-in-law, when Ella was still a baby. They had married young and had kids early, so Steve became a widower at just 25. He devoted the next 18 years to raising his kids and making their lives, and his own, as fulfilling as possible. He's never dated or pursued a romantic relationship since, and has no interest in doing so. He still deeply cherishes his late wife and doesn't feel he could ever look at someone else that way. Steve's sister has always disapproved of this, often voicing strong opinions against his choice. Over the years, she's urged him to move on, and has even tried to introduce him to women, hoping he'd find someone to share his life with. She's told him he'll end up alone and unhappy once the kids move out and won't have anyone around him. She's tried convincing him that he needs romance and that he should find a partner for the future. From what Steve has shared, his sister has been quite annoying about the whole situation, which brings me to the conflict. We celebrated Steve's birthday a little later than planned, last weekend, to be exact, because life got in the way. His sister came into town to surprise everyone and expressed her desire to celebrate with her brother. However, the dinner quickly turned into her pushing him to start dating again, dismissing Ella and her siblings when they pointed out that he isn't alone, as she claims. She even told them they simply wanted him to remain faithful to their ghost mother forever. This led to a heated argument between Steve and his sister. She insisted it was crazy and ridiculous that all 4 of his adult children stayed close by, claiming they were doing it out of pity for him, and that he needed someone to help him spread his wings. My oldest brother-in-law countered that they just enjoyed being near their dad and each other. She responded that's not what Steve needs. He needs a woman, a wife, and intimacy. At that point, I couldn't help but jump in and ask her why she was so obsessed with her brother's love life and why she had nothing else to focus on. She was taken aback by my interruption and told me to learn to speak to people politely. Steve backed me up, saying I had a valid point, and asked her to leave. She then insisted that I owed her an apology for questioning her character. Am I the idiot? Not at all. Oh, the hypocrisy. Do polite people obsess over a sibling's intimate life? Do they dismiss the thoughts and feelings of others, like Ella and her siblings? Do they refer to a deceased relative as a ghost mother? You absolutely do not owe her an apology, and I bet Steve, Ella, and all the siblings appreciate your defense against her obnoxious behavior. I can't imagine sitting at a table with my brother's children present and discussing his personal life. Lord, Auntie must lead a pretty dull life if this is how she spends her time. She needs to back off fast. Her brother's life is not her concern. He's an adult who can make his own choices. Great job standing up for your father-in-law and your wife's family. My son, who is about to become a young teen in a month, has a girl named Shannon who is the same age as him. They have been best friends since pre-K, calling each other brother and sister. After we moved school districts, he has been able to keep in touch with her through texts and calls, and they often play Fortnite and CO together, talking every day. He came to me tonight and asked if it would be okay for him to have a sleepover at her house, as long as her parents were on board. I'm close with her parents, and we often hang out together. I said I was completely okay with that. My fiancé, not my son's father, flipped out almost immediately. I can confidently say that absolutely nothing inappropriate would happen, but that makes no difference to him. He keeps insisting there's no reason for our son to have a sleepover at a girl's house, repeatedly asking why he needs to. And you know what? He doesn't. I'm really put off by my fiancé's attitude on this. I just gave birth to our daughter a few months ago, and since then, he's become the typical girl dad. He keeps saying that if I wouldn't let my kid do it, then I shouldn't be okay with my stepson doing it either. He claims it would be a cold day in hell before he lets any hormonal teenager spend the night with our daughter. This infuriates me. I trust my son, and I know nothing inappropriate is happening. This is his best friend, and not to throw this into the mix, but they're not even remotely each other's type. My son is short -4 on, while Shannon is 5'9". She's a fiery red-headed Irish girl who would probably knock my son out if he ever tried anything. Honestly, it's my fiancé's attitude that frustrates me the most. He acts as if my son is going to be a creep toward Shannon, and even made a comment like, "Are you ready to be a darn grandmother at your age?" My son hasn't even had his first kiss. I told my fiancé that his attitude and his initial freakout were major turnoffs. I'm thoroughly grossed out by him turning this into something it's not. He claims I'm an idiot for not seeing it for what it is, saying no guy wants to spend the night with a girl he isn't interested in, like something inappropriate is going to happen. Am I the idiot for wanting my son to spend the night with his friend, and for being so disgusted by my fiancé that I don't even want to look at him? Not the idiot. My daughter had a best friend who was a boy when she was around 12, and we brought him on vacations with us. He spent weeks at our lake house in the summer, and everything was fine. I don't see it as a big deal. Research shows that trust works this way. Kids are more likely to be trustworthy when parents make it clear they are trusted. If you're worried, I'm sure Shannon's parents would arrange for the kids to sleep in a common area, like on the couches, rather than in her room. Your fiancé is doing some serious projecting, and it's not healthy. It might be time for some couples therapy before you tie the knot. I'm sorry you already had a daughter with someone who seems like a terrible person to share a life with, let alone a child. This dude sounds unhinged. He's not your son's father or stepfather, so he really needs to back off. I hope you don't let him enforce any punishments. Your fiancé needs to stay in his lane. Anyone who believes that boys and girls, or men and women, can't be platonic best friends is the real idiot. I'm 23, female, and will keep it brief. My new sister-in-law is extremely rude, 25. She'll completely ignore you if you try to talk to her. She's never engaged with the group and is always on her phone. One-word answers are common, along with eye rolls and other dismissive behaviors. This has been addressed multiple times to both her and my brother, but her excuse is that she's an introvert. I'm also an introvert, and I know that means I recharge by myself, not in group settings. However, being an introvert doesn't mean you can't interact with people or be polite. We were having dinner for the youngest's 21st birthday, and after the meal, everyone was mingling. My mom tried to talk to her, but was met with a cold shoulder while she was on her phone. I asked her if she wanted a take-home box for some cake, as I was asking everyone else. She ignored me, so I asked again, and she snapped back that she was an introvert and to leave her alone. I lost my cool and told her I didn't realize being an introvert made you a rude witch. She looked shocked, and my brother called me a jerk for saying it. We ended up arguing and left. The family agrees she's rude, but they think I shouldn't have said that. My sister even questioned why we invited her to family events if she always acts this way. Am I the idiot? Not at all. She's just being a straight-up idiot. Being an introvert is not an excuse for this behavior. The best way to handle it is to completely ignore her. Don't talk to her or offer her anything. When someone asks you to gather everyone, just make sure it's everyone but her. Never acknowledge her or engage with her. Don't invite her to anything or remind her about events. If she speaks, just ignore her. If she complains, reflect her attitude back at her. If she's an introvert, then clearly she doesn't exist and can't be bothered, so that's not your problem. I'd roll my eyes and go back to ignoring her. Honestly, I love this approach. It's not even petty. Why should anyone have to deal with the hardship of hanging out with family if she doesn't want to? Don't include her. She'll either be happy or realize she's being unreasonable. It's a win-win either way. What a miserable person she is. I'm an introvert and have terrible anxiety. Sometimes I feel such relief when I walk into my quiet home after socializing. I still know how to say no, thank you. Rolling your eyes, ignoring people, and acting like you're some entitled star who thinks everyone should know not to talk to you. Please. If her rule for being around family is that no one can interact with her, then why is she even there? No one believes she's so introverted that she can't function in society. You're not the idiot. You're totally justified. If she doesn't want to be bothered, then she can stay home. I would stop inviting her altogether.